this evening I'm going to first of all talk about a few basic things about the tarot. And as I've been saying, the tarot is a roadmap for life. And so that means that it works in a similar fashion to all methods of understanding life. And let's talk about why that is needed. Okay, first of all, we are all faced with more information than we know what to do with. And that is chaos. And so all of us need a way to sort that chaos out. And so I use this little red ball to represent the chaos that we're all facing because we just have too much information. The average person in the 16th century had as much information in a lifetime as you and I have in one edition of the Sunday New York Times. And so today we're just awash in information. I mean, we were already awash in the 80s, and then we got television and all sorts of other things from the 50s on, and that gave us lots more information. We got education and so on. And then in 1995, the World Wide Web opened up. And in about 2005, perhaps, it became totally open because of the availability of cell phones to the world. And so the result is today we have all of the world's information with the exception of government secrets and company secrets. But as short of that, we pretty much have access to anything in the world we want to know. And that's a lot. And so we need a way to sort that out. Now, traditionally, the way it was sorted out was in the world's great religions. And so the ministers in the great religions told you what to think, told you what morality was. And as long as you lived your life on that pattern, you were pretty okay. But today, many people have fallen out of the great religions. And so we need something else that can orient us. And one of those orientations is the tarot. Now, why is that so? The reason is that the tarot contains, first of all, 22 of the major archetypal patterns that we find in the universe, things like mother and father and God, let's say, and how those things work, the people, the major people in our lives and the major events that occur in our lives. And in the minor arcana, we have the typical things that can happen in any number of sort of events of life. So good evening, Art. It's nice to see you tonight. At least you and I are here, and a few others, it appears. And thank you. We seem to be doing well here. My wife is going to go get a COVID test tomorrow, but we don't believe that she has it. She just got a little bit spooked a couple days ago, so she's going to go check. But otherwise, we're good. And we're sticking with our quarantine. So anyway, the significant thing about the tarot is it's split into two parts. One part is like the playing cards that you use for any number of games involving playing cards, from poker to bridge to go fish to war, whatever it is that you play with playing cards. And that's essentially the same as the major arcana, with the exception of the fact that in playing cards, you have three court cards. You have the king, the queen, and the jack. But in tarot cards, we have added one more, which is the princess, okay, or the page, sometimes referred to. And so the minor arcana are somewhat like playing cards. The major arcana are archetypal events. And so let me just allow Nick to enter here. And that will help me move me along. Hi, Nick. Glad to have you here to push me along tonight. So I was just explaining the distinction between the major arcana and the minor arcana in tarot cards. And as I was saying a few minutes ago, the minor arcana are like a normal deck of playing cards, except they have one additional person in each suit. So instead of Jack, Queen, King, there's also a princess or a page. But the playing cards and the tarot cards do represent the same sort of powers and events in them. But the major arcana are archetypal energies. And so the way we need to think of those is those are in the divine realm. They are things that we cannot physically touch except as they manifest, but they're definitely there in the universe, and they're there for essentially all species. For example, the archetypal mother is there all the way from human beings down to scorpions and to every creature on the planet. There are mothers. And yep. I guess life invented sex about 3.5 billion years ago. And ever since life invented sex, there have been mothers. And so, and that's an energy that takes one over. And so if one becomes a mother, then you're going to be a mother for life. That mother energy is very powerful. And the same is true of all the energies that we're talking about. Tonight, we're going to be talking about card number 1, which is the magician. We already talked about the Empress, which does represent the mother archetype, and the Emperor, which does represent the father archetype. And those were parts 1 and 2 of this series, but this is part 3 now, where we're going back to talk about the young person who is mature and ready to go out on their own. And so the first thing I want to point out about this, good evening, Nancy, welcome, nice to see you. So the first thing I want to point out is just the basic card that represents the magician, and this is from the Rider Waite deck. And in this card, what this represents is the animus, and it is the animus at the eternal moment. In other words, he has the image of infinity over his head, and he has all 4 elements that are typical of the cards on the table in front of him. So he has the pentacles, he has a cup, the cups, he has a sword, and he has a wand. And he also has a magic wand up here pointing to heaven and to earth. And so the magician is the guy who brings things out of the divine realm and into the physical realm. And the way to think about this is to think about the eternal moment. And so all of us have this opportunity to call upon all of the faculties that we have, which are these on the table. And both men and women have an animus, but it's stronger in women. But we have these faculties that are within our power. And the pentacles represents the ability of sensation to sense things in the physical world. The swords represents the ability to discern things, to divide things up, and to understand them. So it's intelligence. The wands represent intuition, and they also represent creativity. So it's the creative power, and the cups represent our emotional life, so that we have to have the ability to experience, and unless we're psychopaths, we should be able to experience life. And so if we talk about individuation, then what we're talking about is we all should be aspiring to reach the king queen level of each of the suits. Okay, so we may all recognize that we are in one suit or another, but we also should be recognizing that we're deficient in some areas, and we need to focus on bringing ourselves up, our level of experience up. And so if we aspire to the king queen level in all of these four characteristics, that would be wholeness, and that would be individuation in the Jungian sense. And so some of you remember my calligraphy from last December, which is the eternal moment. And we are all in the eternal moment at every moment of our lives. And so let's just think about this. We're all the magician, and we're all in the eternal moment. So the great thing is now and here. This is the eternal moment. And if you do not realize it, you have missed the best part of life. You have missed the realization that you were once the carrier of life, contained between the poles of an unimaginable future and an unimaginably remote past. Millions of years and untold millions of ancestors have worked up to this moment, and you are the fulfillment of this eternal moment. One should take each moment as the eternal moment, as if nothing were ever going to change, not anticipating a faraway future. For the future always grows out of that which is. You must live life in such a spirit that you make in every moment the best of the possibilities, according to C.G. Jung. And I thought so much of it that I learned how to do calligraphy around it. But the important point is you must live life in such a spirit that you make in every moment the best of the possibilities. So for me, this moment when I'm offering to teach you about the magician is my eternal moment. All of my ancestors built up to the point, and my life built up to the point where I can offer this teaching, and your lives built up to the point, and all your ancestors built up to the point where this is the best of your possibilities tonight. God bless you. And so the magician is always in that eternal moment. He's always in the eternal moment. and he always has the power. So this is what Stephen Heller talks about in it, and I'll just read it to you. And the reason I'm showing you this particular page is I want to emphasize also the Kabbalah. And so I have to admit, I'm not too well versed in the Kabbalah. I'm just starting to learn it, really. And so in these first few classes, I'm just going to be pointing out that this is the energy that goes between node 1 and node 3 of the Kabbalah. And we'll be coming back to this in greater detail in the future. And this coming Saturday night at 10 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time or 7 p.m. Pacific Time, we will be having a Jungian-oriented analyst named Rider, who will be speaking to us about the Kabbalah, and that will be this coming Saturday night. So I hope you can all join us for that. And if you don't have a link so that you can register for that session, please write to me at skip.conover@gmail.com, and I will be happy to make it available to you. But right now I'm going to read to you what Stephen Heller has said about the magician, and he's talking about that Rider Waite card that I showed you. And here's what he says. The magician, the first arcanum. And so remember that all of these archetypes are paths within the Kabbalah. And so they're energy paths, energy passing through these paths. So the magician is holding his wand aloft in his right hand and pointing with his left to the ground, which is covered with flowers. The magician stands before a table upon which the pentacle, cup, sword, and wand, symbols of the 4 elements or 4 functions of the lesser self, are laid. Above his head is the sign of infinity, and his robes, as well as the vegetation, are characterized by the dual aspect of unmanifest purity and the operative cosmic power of the one eternal spirit. As the lesser being is properly reordered on the table of life, the magician may freely draw involving power from above and channel evolving life from below toward its supernal destination. Keynote. From the source of form to the essence of formlessness, the soul travels while conjoining the power of becoming with the nature of being. As understanding reaches into the heart of divinity, supreme illumination and boundless power become the experience of the soul. Motto: hark from the deep, unfathomable vortex of the golden light in which the victor bathes. All nature's wordless voice in 1,000 tones ariseth to proclaim, joy unto ye, O men of Mailba earth. A pilgrim hath returned back from the other shore. A new Arhat, liberated one, is born. Peace to all beings. That's from The Voice of Silence by Blavatsky. And the meditation that he puts here is: source of power, father of wisdom, fountain of the stream of life. I pay homage to thee. Thou art the wielder of the wand of power, the wise one who ordereth the combinations of the elements of my being. Be my guide. I need to be transformed, to be changed. From a child of darkness, I want to be changed into a being of light. From a creature of impulse, I must become a being of enlightened will. Transform me, O magical Lord of my soul. Bring into my personality the flash of divine lightning, so that I may awaken to the consciousness of my authentic nature. I was a man, now I shall be a god. I was of the earth, now I join the stars. Hail to thee, son of the firmament. of my soul. I am thy light, I am thy love, thy wisdom and thy power. Okay, so that's what Stephen Heller had to say about it in a very brief form. And I have some other versions of that, but the point is that, and I'm going to put I think I'm going to put, let's see here. Okay. I can drop that. I'm going to put this back up here just for a moment. So again, the Rider Waite, because this is the most basic magician that I know in terms of the tarot. And so what this is saying is all of us have within our grasp, within our reach, different things that we can bring to the party that can change our life going forward in this eternal moment. We are all magic in that way. And so we need to understand those things. We need to understand that, okay, we have certain assets at our disposal. Some of us may have limitations. I have a limitation in the fact that I have 2 artificial joints in my legs right now. And so it's not like I can go running like I was when I was 18. But I still can do things even though I have that disability. And so in the sensing sense, I still have the ability of all my sensations. And in terms of the swords, I still have my intelligence. I can discern between good and evil and that sort of things. In terms of cups, I still have the ability to find my own happiness. And in terms of creativity, I can find my own ways to be creative and intuitive, and so, which is represented by the wands. And so I'm doing that by creating this series of videos for you. That's my part of my creativity. And so I don't know what I'm creating or how valuable it will be to people over time, but nonetheless, that's what I'm driven to do. And so that's what I'm doing with this thing, this body that I call my life, is driven to do those things. Now, each one of you will be different, and you're all magicians in your own way. But also this card traditionally represents the animus. And next week, we will be talking about the high priestess, and that is traditionally about the anima. But anyway, moving on. Are there any comments from the webinar, from the people on YouTube about what I've said so far? Okay.
It's very encouraging. Thank you.
All right. Good. I'm delighted to hear that.
It ain't over till it's over. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, it's not over till it's over. And we all, you know, if we're hearing this session, we all have the ability, you know, some part of ability to do that. Now, I have a series of other books and descriptions of the magician. They get much more detailed than what I've gone to so far. And let me see if I can find the next one. Okay, yeah. All right, so this is the magician from the Marseille deck. And the Marseille deck is supposedly the earliest deck of the tarot. And a gentleman named Alejandro Jodorowsky and Marianne Costa wrote The Spiritual Teacher in the Cards, The Way of the Tarot. That's this book, The Way of the Tarot. I'll show it after I finish showing this card of theirs. But again, the first thing you see in this magician is his hat still has an indication of the infinity symbol. He still has a wand referring to above and below. He still has a sword. He still has cups. And he still has wands. This is the wand, I guess, for him. And so cups, swords, wands, and pentacles, which is these things, these coins. Okay, now Jodorowsky has written some rather long piece here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read a couple of pages of it. And so he's referring to a divination reading, but I just want to emphasize that this class is not about divination. This class is about using the tarot as a roadmap for life. And but by hearing what he says about divination, it may give you some insight into what we're talking about here. So here's what he says about inner reading. The magician indicates a beginning. Reasoning is quick. There is no lack of astuteness and talent. All that remains is to take action. This card also indicates the necessity of choosing, deciding to go into mourning for the everything is possible. That is the mark of youth, okay? Because when we're young or when we're at the beginning of a project, we have to decide to go forward. So this magician has all the assets in front of him at the table. So Jodorowsky goes on. In the family of the psychological world, this is the boy one still is, even after 40 years have passed. The boy one should have been, if not born, a woman. The boy that one has raised. The boy that one has trouble letting fly on his own wings. The boy one meets and with whom one is preparing to form a couple in which everything is to be invented. The magician shows that something is possible, that a new beginning can be made, and that nothing is opposed to initiating a new action. His wand could represent a request for help or an inspiration waiting to be charged by a more mature force, or perhaps by the progress of maturity itself. Even though he is the first of the major arcana, and an initiate in his own right, the magician still has a road to travel ahead of him. This is the card of the unity that must choose a way to take action. Now he has another heading, which is, and if the magician spoke. And this is what the magician would say. I am in the present. Whatever action I wish to undertake, it is now time to commit. My entire future is seated in the decision I make at this moment. Do as I do. See all the moments when you are not yourself, where you are not living in the here and now. That is the moment of eternity and the sight of the infinite. What are you waiting for? Drop those useless burdens that are the remainders of the past and fear of the future. I embody the energy called consciousness. I am absolutely present here in this body, among other bodies, within a given space and time. I am not separate from my surroundings. I am aware of the breathtaking multiplicity of everything that is. I invite you to experience this inventory with me. Be aware of all the spaces, of all matter, trees, plants, galaxies, atoms, cells. If I am aware, I am not merely a limited mind inside a given form. I become the totality of the divine work. How does one become conscious? It is simple. You do not have any past within nor any future, nothing but one moment, the cosmic moment. That's where I was emphasizing the eternal moment. You should break once and for all with the deviations of the ego, the old wounds. You must detach yourself from all plans, all suffering, all programming. Only then will the light of consciousness arrive. If you are living for yourself in the moment, death does not exist. You have suffered losses in the past, and you may suffer more in the future. But here and now, nothing is lost. Perhaps you aspire to perfect yourself, to improve your life. But in the moment, there are no aspirations. You are there with all your potential. I, the magician, take a position in the crossroads of eternity and infinity that we call the present. I am loyal to everything that I am, my body, my intelligence, my heart, my creative force. My table of flesh has its 3 feet rooted in the ground. I anchor myself somewhere in the diversity, and it is from this point that I take action. Out of the infinite number of possibilities, I have chosen one, my golden pinnacle, the traction point that will lead me to totality. Okay, so I'm going to stop this share for a minute because I just want to show you the book. Okay, all right, let's get rid of the virtual background so I can show you these things. Okay, so here's the book by Alejandro, Jodorowsky, and Marianne Costa, The Way of Tarot, the Spiritual Teacher, and the Cards. And Jodorowsky was a member of the Golden Dawn early in the 20th century. This book, I think, was originally written about 1940, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall, but here it's saying originally published in French under the title La Voix du Tarot by Editions Albin. First edition published in 2009 by Destiny Books. Okay, maybe it's more recent. But in any case, he's a scholar on the Golden Dawn. That's what he has done. So, any thoughts about what I read there? Okay, then I'm going to press on. Just see. I think this book, no. Okay. The next one I'm going to read from is this book. It's not actually this book, but it's the author of this book, which is the Kabbalistic Tarot. But what I'm going to read is from Tarot Psychology by Robert Wang. And so this is the book that I'm currently using to try to get my mind around the Kabbalistic Tarot. Get that out of the way. Let's see. Okay, maybe this is it. Okay. All right, so this is Robert Wang's short form of of the magician. Now, Robert Wang has been doing tarot cards and Jungian-oriented tarot cards for decades, actually. And so this card is from the Jungian tarot. And some things about it mystify me. For example, I do not see the sword in this particular card, but that's just me. So here's the short form of what Robert Wang has to say. The magician is the celestial alchemist, the ultimate director of the quest for self. He is the author of sun and moon. He is at once the potential for all opposites and the means for their reconciliation. As Mercurius, he is messenger of the gods. So he's Mercurius, or Hermes in the Greek form. The primary archetype associated with this card, each card actually embodies myriad archetypes, a few of which are most significant, is the animus, a Latin word meaning soul, chosen by Jung to mean the female contrasexual component. Jung stated that deep inside of every woman there is a male figure, animus, and that every man has within himself a female figure, anima, or spirit, Latin for spirit. These are real personalities which inhabit the unconscious and with which we interact, especially in dreams. Anima and animus are our inner antagonists. They are guides into the caverns of our own minds. When a man talks about animus, he does so as an outsider, but to a woman, this inner figure is very real. He is the epitome of male. He is father, brother, husband, son. He is one whose characteristics reflect the traditional male role throughout history, including demand of respect and a tendency to be quite argumentative. Animus loves to expound on things, can be very wordy, and does not like to admit that he is ever wrong. Moreover, he may change his mind as quickly as he may change the form in which he appears. For a woman, the magician is the most important card in the deck. For a man, the same may be said of the high priestess. These are the essential cards of male and of female from which all other archetypal figures derive. A woman's whole quest for self-discovery is encapsulated in her relationship to the magician, animus. Jung states that this very complex archetype can appear not just as a single figure, but can be a group of some sort, such as a panel of judges. Mercurius is also the archetype of the trickster. The magician makes things up as he goes along and will lie if it amuses him to do so. Considerable discrimination is required here, and many of the points which can be made about the fool can also be made about this card. Okay, so that's what Robert Wang said there. I thought I had something here. Yes, okay. So Robert Wang had a couple of other things to say in a separate book, which is called, let me just get this share off here for a moment. Okay, so the second book is the Jungian Tarot and its archetypal imagery. And I don't know, let's see, okay, so the magician is here on the cover. Let me go admit this person, Corinna. So hello, Corinna. Welcome. Okay, so now I'm going to read you a few things about this, again, archetypal magician. And so I'll put him back on the screen. And Okay, so this card has acquired some very remarkable attributes over the centuries. It originally intended to be the frivolous king of carnival, but what is now called the magician would have been the first card in the game of triumphs. So it appears that an amusing figure commensurate with the juggler who entertained the royal courts has been transformed into a sort of celestial Merlin in on the one hand, and into one of the essential components of the creation of the macrocosm on the other. The magician is, as the first phase of creation, an exceptionally complex card to which many archetypes relate. The card shares qualities of the fool and is, in fact, another aspect of the archetype of spirit. Yet, whereas the fool exists but is no thing, the magician is the first matter or first principle, which medieval alchemists called Mercurius. This concept may be explained by analogy to the artist who thinks his work into existence before actually translating that thought onto canvas. In the same way, it may be said that the magician is the creative thought of the fool, something that has not yet been brought into manifestation, but which exists completely. In ancient pantheons, there is no god, which is exactly equivalent, but the activities of the magician are similar to those of the creator sky god of every primitive society. Powers long forgotten, which continue to exist in shadowy and fragmentary references on stone and papyrus. Tracks of the ancient sky gods, deities which were universally superseded by other religious forms, are found around the world from Africa to Australia. The underlying pattern agreed upon was a primordial pair, sky, male, and earth, female, which produced everything else, as was seen in Sumerian mythology, where the air god Enlil is the product of heaven and earth. The Greek poet Hesiod also describes the creative connection of heaven and earth in the activities of the now obscure Uranus, sky, and Gaia, earth. This widespread belief in sky gods among early societies, and particularly in the generative relationship between sky and earth, is a rather rare area of cross-cultural agreement, which may be of special interest to those seeking cultural parallels that are legitimately archetypal. It is in this context that the magician may be understood. He may be profitably related to ancient sky god, ruling over heaven and earth, produced simultaneously out of chaos as the first day in Genesis by the fool, wherein a big bang produces the thought conditions of the apparent separation of man and God. Then evolution fills in everything in between, which is the substance of creation on which man must act. The magician creates the environment of the sky, the air, winds, the water, rains, and the fire, lightning. And then he creates those things which exist in the sky, the moon, the sun, and the stars. With the primitive religions, what the primitive religions suggest about this process is that creation is a cooperative effort between man and God, earth and sky. It suggests that everything which exists between the two, our created things, are expressive of the relationship between the creator, the one, and the created, the many, between the collective unconscious and the individual consciousness. Creation may be considered to be a dialogue between man and God about the perfectly balanced dual nature of the magician, which is man united with God. Theoretically, the magician is at once that which transmits and that which is transmitted. Expressed in another way, the magician is both the subject of the dialogue of life and the dialogue itself. All tarot cards except the Fool are implicit in the Magician. He is the totality of the tarot, which explains why the qualities of this card are so widely divergent. From the most sanctified and godlike to the most capriciously human, the Magician is a role model. Some might say a Christ or Buddha figure for the reintegration of opposites, for the dissolution of personality, self. Magician is also, insofar as he is animus and anima, the antagonist to the personality. It must be explained here that it does not matter if one pursues anima or animus. Both are mercurius, both are the self. Animus is the male aspect of the Magician. Anima, separated out as the high priestess, like Eve from the rib of Adam, is its female aspect. The reconciliation of dualities results in the same condition of wholeness that is represented by the Magician. The Magician can be variously described. He is the alchemical Mercurius. He is the ultimate spiritual self united with God, far beyond the totality of conscious and unconscious. He is the macrocosmic atom. He is the son who creates the mother and father. He is the androgynous origin of archetypal sun and moon. He is the philosopher's stone. All of these different terms describe aspects of the same irrational principle and can obviously be very confusing in their diversity. So the Magician is the initiator. The Magician, I'm just reading headlines now from this book because I don't want to read the whole thing, but he is the initiator. He represents above and below, so his hand pointed to the sky and his other hand touching the wand in this case, or the caduceus, represents the physical world. He's the sun and the moon both, and he also is the negative aspects. He's potential versus actual, animus aspect of the Magician. Okay, that's all I'm going to read out of that book. But you start to get the idea, I think. All right, any comments there before I go on?
It seems to me that the Magician is the most human. The Magician has the most potential.
Yeah. Well, the Magician is still an archetype, so in that sense, he's between heaven and earth. That's why he's referred to as Mercurius. Because remember, Mercury was the Greek god who went into the underworld and brought things up for people to understand, and the underworld being the underworld being the unconscious in this case. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you say that the Magician represents like the entire search for self for women?
Yeah, in this sense, in this archetypal sense, yes.
Why?
In why?
Sorry, and yeah, it's probably impossible to answer, but
Well, I mean, in the
of,
context of 22 archetypes, that's what he represents. Okay, so what we're trying to understand here as a roadmap for life is that once you face the chaos of our world, okay, which is my red ball represents the chaos of our world, okay, and I keep working with it and keep thinking it'll make my hands strong, but actually the world is chaotic and has a huge multiplicity. And so in order for us to do anything with it, we need to put the chaos of our lives into the context of some sort of structure that we can think about. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it describes you, okay? Because all of us have both masculine and feminine aspects, and we have them in different degrees and different strengths, let's say. And so what we're talking about here is the generic idea, which would apply to most people in an archetypal sense. Next week, we will be talking about the High Priestess, which represents the opposite set of energies. And these archetypes are energies that do exist, that we can identify fairly easily in many ways. And so, you know, they're so true that they're imperfectly true. Okay. In other words,
It's not that it doesn't resonate. I was just curious because it seems to be a male figure and the high priestess seems to be a female figure. And you said that represents the male search for self. So I was just curious, like what?
Well, it's the masculine energy in the context of the way the tarot thinks about these things. Now, the tarot doesn't think, in fairness, okay? And so, so the purpose here is mainly to put down stakes in the ground, which then we can talk about and work with over time. So this is a 1 year long course. We're on week 3. Okay, we've done the Empress and the Emperor, and then we've doubled back to do the Magician. And next week we'll do the High Priestess, and we're doing one archetype a week. And so theoretically in 19 more weeks, we will have completed the major arcana, and then we will have a appreciation or not only the complexity of these archetypal ideas, as Wang says here, these ideas, the magician, for example, actually represents multiple archetypes, not only one. And so we're only, the tarot just provides an outline. And so in terms of know yourself, the idea of know yourself, which is a fundamental idea that we're working with here, the idea would be that these are entry points to know yourself, so that if something is happening to you, if you look at the 156 possibilities that are represented by the tarot, it can give you a sense of where you are in your life. And it also gives you a direction about what you need to do. And that's the interesting thing about the Kabbalah. I'm going to come back to this in later weeks, but I'll show you the Kabbalah here again. All right, so these are energies, and there are 22 energies and 10 nodes of the Kabbalah. And so we have worked with the Magician. Next week, we're going to work with the High Priestess, and we worked with the Mother archetype. And so if you look at it from a structural point of view, and you see that something about the Magician, the energy of the Magician is sloshing back and forth in your life, then you can see what else that might be connected with once you understand the Kabbalah, which I'm not prepared to teach at this point. So I'm only making you aware that we're going to come back to this at a later time. So other other points. Welcome, Jane. I was actually responding to someone who has left, but anyway, I'm going to look at the YouTube chat for a minute. And Nancy asks, is there a shadow side of the magician? Yes, definitely there is a shadow side. And let's see, where can I find that easily? There are so many diagrams about this stuff that it basically, if in the tarot, every card is paired with another card, and the combination of the two cards, whatever it is, are add up to the number 21. And so if you have the number 1 card, which is what we have here, then we have to go over and look at the number 20 card, which is judgment, the judgment, and that will say something about the other end of this. I mean, what the magician kind of represents is Adam and the beginning. Judgment represents the end. But besides that, there is a bad magician, as we see if anybody has seen the movie The Joker. You can see what happens with a bad magician, and how someone can devolve into insanity, and so that's a very sad case. But obviously, we want to keep it on the road of life, and so if we go the other way to the dark side, then we may devolve into insanity. And so it's better to keep moving forward. And so Miles asks, is there a shadow on every card? Yes. So, and hello, Crystal from Texas. So we have 156 ideas in the tarot. There are 22 of the major arcana that are persons and typical experiences of life, and archetypal, but they are in the divine realm, so they aren't something that we can touch. And then there are the 4 suits, which have 56 cards in the 4 suits, 14 in each suit. And those are the typical things that can happen to one in life. And the ideal of individuation would be to get to the top of all 4 of the suits, not only one. And so, I know I typically tend to be pretty high level in intuition and thinking, but I'm pretty terrible in sensing facts, knowing facts, and also I'm not that emotional, and I don't have a very good control of my emotions, as people who've been here many times know, that occasionally when I talk about these things, they overwhelm me. And so, anyway, so that there's 56 plus 22, that's 78. So if you're buying a tarot deck, make sure there's 78, because sometimes people are selling decks that only have the major arcana, and sometimes they talk about them as divination decks, not tarot decks. But you want to definitely get a tarot deck that has 78 cards. And then there's another 78 possibilities, which are the reverse of every card. So every card has its shadow aspect. And that makes 156 possible things to think about. Now, what do these things offer us? They offer us a way to step back from the chaos of our life and say, okay, where am I now? Okay, if I think about this in terms of the tarot, where am I now on the roadmap of my life? And if I know where I am, then I can also do an assessment of how I can change my position. And the point of the Magician card is that you can change your position anytime. Okay, this is the eternal moment. And so at any given time, you are you, and you have your assets in front of you. You have physical assets in terms of the coins. You have creativity. You have thinking, and you have your heart, your emotional life. And so all of those things we all have. If you can listen to this conversation, we all have it, no matter how bad our lives are. And so with those things, we can decide, okay, what's the best of my possibilities right now? What could I do? That's the point of Jung's statement about the eternal moment. So the eternal moment is every moment, and we need to decide what's the best of the possibilities for us right now. And so for me, the best of the possibilities is talking to myself on YouTube and not listening to the television set. So anyway, so Miles says, if we were to choose a card as representative of Jesus, would this be it? Yes, some commentators say so, and also representative of the Buddha. And I may get to that. Nancy says, there's a great chapter on the animus in Barbara Hanna's The Animus, Volume 2, Introduction to the Course on the Animus. Yeah, I mean, there's huge information on all these things, what the tarot does is offer you a roadmap. The map is not the territory, however, and so in all cases you can see where you are on the map and then delve into that in greater detail and experience the restaurants and the play areas and whatever they are on a given map. So Lena says, interesting. John says, the significance, what significance do you assign to the suits in relation to Jung? Well, keeping in mind that Jung did not say terribly much about the tarot. And one of the books that I have here is this book, Tarot and the Archetypal Journey by Sallie Nichols. This was written about 40 years ago, and then it was updated. Okay, wait. Let me get rid of the virtual background again. Okay, so here's the book, and this is a new version of it with a foreword by Mary Greer. Mary Greer is a very famous tarot reader and writer, and you know, her point is that Jung didn't really say that much about the tarot per se. And so what has happened in later time is that people who are Jungian have amplified Jung's thinking. And so I can read you a little bit of this in her foreword. This is Mary Greer's foreword. Let me just let's just read what she says about Jung and the Tarot. Okay. So this is Mary Greer's forward. She says, Jung and the Tarot. Jung himself had little to say directly about Tarot. His first mention of it is on 16 September 1930, when Jung wrote to a Mrs. Eckstein, quote, yes, I know of the Tarot. It is, as far as I know, the pack of cards originally used by the Spanish gypsies, the oldest cards historically known. They are still used for divinatory purposes, unquote. While wrong on all counts, this marks Jung's early interest, expanding on it shortly thereafter. It also seems as if the set of pictures of the Tarot cards were distantly descended from the archetypes of transformation, a view that has been confirmed for me in a very enlightening lecture by Professor Rudolf Bernoulli. The symbolic process is an experience in images and of images. Its development usually shows an enantiodromian structure like the text of the I Ching, and so presents a rhythm of negative and positive, loss and gain, dark and light. In March 1933, Jung spoke about the Tarot during a seminar he was conducting on active imagination. Speaking of playing cards and their four suits, he said the red and the black symbolize the opposites, and the division of four, clubs, spades, diamonds, and hearts, also belongs to the individuation symbolism. They are psychological images, symbols with which one plays, as the unconscious seems to play with its contents. They combine in certain ways, and different combinations correspond to the playful development of events in the history of mankind. He went on to describe the Tarot trumps as 21 cards upon which are symbols or pictures of symbolic situations. Quote, those are sort of archetypal ideas of a differentiated nature, which mingle with the ordinary constituents of the flow of the unconscious, and therefore it is applicable to an intuitive method that has the purpose of understanding the flow of life, possibly even predicting future events, at all events lending itself to the reading of the conditions of the present moment. And then, unquote, then the only card he talked about in particular was the devil. Quote, now, in the Tarot, there is a hermaphroditic figure called the Diablo. That would be in alchemy the gold. In other words, such an attempt as the union of opposites appears to the Christian mentality as devilish, something evil which is not allowed, something belonging to black magic. In 1950, Jung asked each of the four members of the psychology club to explore an intuitive synchronistic method of either astrology, geomancy, tarot cards, or the I Ching. He determined that Grimaud's Ancien Tarot de Marseille, which I was showing you earlier, used here by Sallie Nichols, was the only deck that possessed the properties and fulfilled the requirements of metaphor that he had gleaned from within the alchemical texts. Henny Binder took the task of learning the Tarot, but got no further than gathering 2 pages of notes from Jung that are preserved at the Jung Institute of New York. They consist of brief major arcana meanings taken from Pappus's Tarot of the Bohemians, appended by a few words dictated by Jung that noted associated parts of the psyche and the individuation process. These are the only hints we have as to the direction of Jung's thinking regarding the cards themselves. Jung's comments show that he had not made any obvious to us associations, including those between the 4 suits and his own functions. For he defined the suits as masculine cards, wands equals libido, swords equals spiritual force, feminine cards, pentacles equals the material world, and cups equals feeling. He was almost there. Most Jungian influenced tarot readers now see them as wands equals intuition, swords equals thinking, cups equals feeling, and pentacles equals sensation. Marie-Louise von Franz in Psyche and Matter described Jung's plans for his great experiment, which he'd had to stop due to too few workers and too little means. He hoped that by examining an accident or traumatic event via all 4 divinatory techniques, the rather vague results of each method would converge with the others in a consciously recognizable pattern of relationships, revealing what the self thought of the particular incident. Though Sallie Nichols' wide-ranging experiences through Sallie Nichols' wide-ranging experiences and references to operas, plays, myth, and literature, painting and sculpture, as well as news and culture, we find jumping off places for our own current cultural associations. Follow her lead to discover symbolic meanings relevant to everyone and lessons regarding the human condition, psychological states, and attitudes that can lead to personal insight. Finally, as one of her greatest gifts to us, Nichols gives direction for Jungian techniques like word association, active or creative imagination, and dialogue. Use these experiential techniques as she directs to discover the personal gold of your own alchemical process, bringing to light materials from the unconscious depths of the self. This book will help you use tarot as an interactive roadmap for your own archetypal journey. That's signed by Mary Greer. And so I was reading from the foreword to this book, Tarot and the Archetypal Journey, The Jungian Path from Darkness to Light by Sallie Nichols, with a foreword by Mary Greer. Now, I will mention that on Amazon, there are 2 versions of this. There's the original Sallie Nichols version, which was published in 1980, shortly before her death, and later was rewritten or represented by Mary Greer in, I think, 2009, so 30 years later. And that's the one I was looking at just now. And so let's see, can you point me to something which would substantiate the claim that the dark side, insanity are bad? If I relish the anger, hatred, why is my experience less valuable? I love Chaos Joker. Well, honestly, we can't live that way. Okay. We do have bounds on what sanity and insanity are. And when you look at the Joker, what you see is that an insane person can release the insanity within all of us. But the reality is we can't have a lot of people going around thinking that they, who have no emotion whatsoever because they're psychotic, just killing people because it's fun. And so there are boundaries beyond which our society cannot go, and that's the point of the Joker. And in a sense, it's a crisis of huge import. I'm going to write a review on the Joker in the next day or so on my Archetype in Action website, and I'm not going to expose the little insight that my wife and I had from it right now. But the point is that there's a little bit of the Joker in all of us, in part. Okay, in other words, we were all put down by someone. We've all, as I said, I think on the third lesson that I did in this group back in 2016, in the summer of 2016, I said that the reason our president was gaining traction was because all of us have been put down some way. He was put down by his father multiple times, and he was, the classic thing that wealthy people did with their kids that they couldn't control was send them off to military school, and that's what they did with our president. But the fact is that all of us have had something happen. We've all been sent to the principal's office, or we've all had our mothers wash our mouths out with soap or something like that. Or our father has taken us in the back shed and given us a whipping or whatever it is. And so we all have resentments of that sort. And so obviously for that reason, the Joker resonates with most people, I would think. Most people have been put down in one way or another. The problem is that there have to be guardrails for civilization to exist. And if we don't have limits to that, then we have chaos. And the Joker gives, the ending of the Joker provides a perfect example of that, where in the end, the Joker is doing dastardly things still, and he's being chased around by the orderlies who can't catch up with him. And so, he's basically criminally insane in terms of the way the law and our civilization looks at it. So at some point, the reason we have laws and law and order is so that our society doesn't devolve into a world where the clowns are rioting everywhere and destroying property everywhere and so on. That can't go on, and that's not the way we can live our lives properly. Let's see what else here. I don't know what Shava means, so I'm just going to remove that. And so, all right, thank you for your help, Miles, on that. Can I point to something that would show that insanity is bad? Yes, I can point to a very specific example, because a personal friend of mine was engaged to a woman who was murdered by the son of Sam. And that was a very real thing. And so my friend's fiance was grabbed by this insane man and raped and murdered. And so that would be a perfect example of the dark side and badness in society. So just so we're clear. So John Florida Man says, do I plan to, on reading the cards and comparing the reading to other control mediums, sort of pseudo-scientifically? No, I don't. Actually, I have done an 18 video series on divination in 2017 and 2018. And so if you want to learn about divination and you want to see a few readings, you can go look at that series. Also, almost every day these days, I'm doing a reading for the President of the United States in preparation for the election, and those readings can be found on my Twitter account. So you're welcome to go over and take a look at those readings. But in this class, in this session, I am not dealing with the tarot as a divination technique. I'm dealing with the tarot as a roadmap for life and a way of understanding oneself psychologically in a chaotic world. And if you want to know something about my divination prowess, you can go over to the Twitter feed and take a look at that. And in terms of pseudo-scientifically, there's no such thing as pseudo-scientific. It's either scientific or it is not. And the tarot is not about the rational side of life. It's about the irrational. And so therefore, doing things like holding all alternatives constant and then deciding for X is totally irrelevant. In fact, it's irrelevant to this entire channel because Dr. Jung was not about the logos at all. In other words, he was not about rationality. He was talking about the other side of life. And he did that from the first two paragraphs of the Red Book, which if you just pick up the reader's edition of the Red Book or listen to, I read the whole Red Book into this YouTube channel. So if you go to the first reading, part one of the Red Book that I did, you can hear the first two paragraphs, but he clearly states that he's not going to work in that area. And so what I can tell you, and you know, this is demonstrable, but maybe not empirically provable, is that I can walk into a room with 1,000 people in it, an auditorium with 1,000 people in it. I can take the tarot cards and throw them across the stage. And as long as they will give me the benefit of the doubt, everyone will think I did a reading for them, every single person. And the reason for that is quite simple. And that is that the tarot does relate to these archetypal energies that are within all of us. We all have a mother. So if I see the card, the Empress, in my reading, and I say something about mother, it's going to resonate with everybody in the room. Now, some people have good mothers and some people have bad mothers and some people have godly mothers, what have you. And I won't know what the reading means to any one of those 1,000 people. But what I will know is that it will have meaning to all 1,000 people. And the reason is that we all have psychological hooks. And so it's like astrology. In astrology, if you read the astrology column in the newspaper, you won't remember the 363 times in the year where the astrology just didn't connect with your life. But you will remember the 2 times in a year when they nailed it exactly. Man, they predicted exactly what was going to happen in my life. Okay. And so therefore, and that's why we have thousands of astrology columns in every newspaper of the world, and we have no columns about psychology, or practically none, and very few about the tarot. Um, but the point is that what the tarot does in a divination is it causes you to investigate something about you, and it will teach you something about yourself in a rather random fashion, actually. Now, a gifted psychic, sometimes people think I'm gifted and sometimes not, but Melissa Townsend is certainly a gifted psychic. And so she did a reading for me about 4 weeks ago, and um, it was profound. And I know something about tarot for the last 25 years. So the fact that I'm saying that about her reading is a great, accolade to her psychic capabilities. But what I know is that everybody will have something. If I read a tarot with 10 placements and 156 possible things for each of the 10 placements on the layout, and I read through that, which I can do because I'm quite intuitive, so I can generate a story about this, any layout, basically. That's what I can do. Everyone will hear 3 or 4 things that are really applicable to their lives. Everyone will have that experience. And it will cause them to, at least unconsciously, if not consciously, it will cause them to rethink certain aspects of their lives. Now, what we're talking about here is levels of interaction, human interactivity, which we all need to keep our mental health. So we all have friends that we meet in the hallway or at the drinking fountain, or we have tea with, or we go out to dinner with, or what have you, and we have conversations with them. And sometimes those conversations can carry us away. And those conversations, whatever they are, will help us to deal with the sort of low level background noise of our lives. We say, oh, that son of a gun boss of mine, every boss is an asshole, right? So you can say something nasty about your boss and your friend will back you up, right? And and that confirmation helps you with your mental health. You understand, it helps you deal with the conflicts in your life, let's say. Or, oh, my husband did such and such, and then your friend says, oh, well, my husband did the same thing, and this is what I did about it, type thing. Okay, so that's a normal level conversation. Then we have the tarot. Now, what the tarot or other divination techniques does is it will activate specific archetypes. Okay, so it's not like a conversation where the topics can go all over the place. They're archetypal things that can apply to your psyche, to your own unconscious, and they cause you to, what I call, move the furniture around in your own unconscious, and they cause you to reflect upon your unconscious and what's happening in your life. And so it's sort of a mid-level of therapy that is useful to some people. Some people are afraid of it and are afraid to know. They don't want to know where they're making a mistake. And so they're afraid of what they might find out if they have a tarot reading, because they do indeed find things out about themselves. But then the higher level of therapy is a professional mental health professional. And I don't do that, and I am not a mental health professional. So if you work with a mental health professional, then they can, through a long series of discussions, get down to, you know, the very nitty gritty of your psyche, and see where trouble is, and see if they can't make that better for you. And that's the purview of mental health professionals, and I wouldn't attempt to do that. What the tarot does in a divination is it causes you to reflect on things that, you know, come to your attention as you're listening to the reader. And so anyway, I hope that's helpful. And so if it's divinatory, then perhaps it can be quantified in a way, hence the pseudo. I would be very suspicious. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
Oh, no, just that for me, I feel that when it comes to these things like divination and stuff, just going with to address the questioner's question, there has to be, not has to be, okay, there'll be a lack of separation, and I think the questioner is his question, I feel an implicit desire, not desire, but there'll be a need to separate, you see, because if we want to like kind of, even when we try to explain the phenomena, we're separating ourselves from it. It's kind of like you don't go into an I Ching reading or a tarot reading with, you know, you go with a question, but that's the mode that has no separation, means that the answer is you. You know, you don't go into a divination with the mode of, you know, I'm going to see how this works, because that feeds into the answer, you see. Yeah, so it's kind of addressing what he says. I mean, we can talk about sorry, go on. Yeah.
Well, it simply isn't scientific in the quote unquote scientific method way, and you know, many scientists deny that psychology is a science, and in the way they want to define science, they're right. But if you're going to hold all the variables constant and decide for X, then that's what they think of as science. And the problem is that in psychology, you can't hold all the variables constant, because all the variables are in action all the time. And so in a sense, it is a kind of art, but it is a science too, in the sense that we can define certain aspects of it, like archetypes. And so Jung's point was, and the point of the Gnostics is, that you can actually have an experience. And it's only if you have an experience do you know something psychologically, right? And so if I can tell the child the stove is hot, but they won't know what hot is until they touch the stove, then they know what hot is. So in the case of, do you believe in God? And Jung replies, I have no need to believe, because that would be somebody convincing him, as many theologians try to do. He says, I know. And what he knows is from his own experience. And that's what I know also. So I don't have to believe in God anymore, because I know too. And I have had experiences of God. And that's what my lecture on finding the living God is all about. So anyway, does that resonate, Nick? I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
got-
I'll just simply add that I feel that like humanity, I feel that we are mature enough to already know, and then we've got enough history behind us to already know that these are two modes of being / doing that are both important, and they are not antagonistic, and they work in harmony rather than one trying to subsume the other.
Okay,
And,
now I have to do one thing, Nick, for good order here on YouTube. Whoever blockchain crypto is, discontinue what you're doing now. This is not a place to advertise blockchain crypto. If I see it one more time, I'm going to block you permanently from this channel. Okay, if I see it one more time. And so please discontinue that activity. Okay, that's it. You're gone. Sorry. This is somebody that's advertising something that, let's see. Let's see. I'm going to block this person from this channel. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, folks, but I don't tolerate people using my audience for selling anything. And so I don't know what the purpose of that was, but I presume they got their jollies out of it, and that will be the end of that. I'm sorry, Nick. Sorry for interfering.
Oh, no problem at all, Skip. So I just want to use your audience to advertise this notion that that I feel that humanity is like, we've got enough history and experience behind us to like know and embrace that those are two modes of being, doing, apprehending the world, and they work in concert.
Precisely.
You know what I mean?
The rational and the irrational, sure.
Exactly. So perhaps it's about a recognition of, perhaps we could refine it by, fostering more recognition of where the boundaries between those two lie, the boundaries between those two modes are. And they're definitely not static, but if we know as much as we can where that boundary is, then I feel that it would frame the kind of questions and how we perturb reality in a more healthy and open way that's better for evolution.
I agree with you entirely. Now, Brendan has said something to me on chat here, which is private. I don't know if I'm going to read it.
Skip, I'm sorry I'm being anecdotal about bad things. And now this incident you've had now with this person reminds me of an incident I'm writing to you about now. 15 years ago on Facebook, I started a group called Prayer Works, which was about sending good vibes, healing vibes, good wishes, intentions, quanta to other people. And for about 10 weeks, it was wonderful, and so wonderful that I registered it as a charity with the Maryland state, the state of Maryland. You'll find it there. If you look under there, there's my name on it. But I began to realize that I had to monitor it, not only every day, but almost every morning, every afternoon, because people took it over to advertise things. People took it over to be anti-Semitic or anti-Black or anti-Islamic. I mean, it was just the presence of people wanting to be malevolent made me shut it down.
Yeah.
And now it's been taken up by an evangelical group, which has nothing to do with my intention.
Well, that's the dark side of humanity and the dark side of civilization, and it's an unfortunate thing. And fortunately for us, both on Zoom and on YouTube, we have the capability of shutting people down entirely. And so that person won't be back in that form. I suppose they can change forms and come back and harass us some more, but I don't think that they will find that a very productive line, because it's not like I have 1 million followers. I have 10,000, but I don't have 1 million. And so, you know, we have to understand that there are people who seek recognition and seek attention that way, and I'm very empathetic toward them, but I'm not going to tolerate them destroying what I'm trying to do by doing their thing. And so I simply say, you know, go take your individuation process somewhere else, and we'll move along here. Okay, I have a few more things. Go ahead. Brendan, do you have?
Oh,
Well, I was only going to add, I think that was, Nicholas Nicholas had a growl. Nicholas was growling, but what you say reminds me of the tragedy that took place in Christchurch in New Zealand, and the motive for that awful mass murder was that everybody said in New Zealand, it's such a great country, this can never happen. The motivation for that was to show the world that it could happen even there.
Right. Well, I do want to bring up the subject of evil, and this is probably a good time to do it, because as I told you earlier, and mind you, I'm reading this book, which is called The Kabbalistic Tarot, as a way to get my mind around how the Tarot and the Kabbalah work together, and I'm completely convinced that they do, but I'm not ready to start teaching on it yet. And that Robert Wang says this is a textbook for talking about this. And so in this book, though, he has something valid to say about evil. And so I want to show you that page, because it relates to this very topic. And I had set it up earlier, kind of, I guess, expecting that something like this would happen. So this is the page. And what he's pointing out is that with all of these archetypes, if they're not in balance, then there's a problem. And so here's what he says. Evil is unbalanced force. It is a byproduct of evolution resulting from a stage of temporary imbalance in one sephira prior to the mitigating emergence of another. That is the Kabbalistic theory. At each point of evolution is left an extreme of a specific energy. Evil is an extreme. It attempts to pull to one side, making balance impossible. Unity is the ultimate good. Unity is the result of the balance of two opposites. For example, Gebera is dynamic strength, and its opposition, Chesed, is mercy or love. The extreme of Gebera is hideous cruelty. The extreme of Chesed is the worst kind of weakness, manifesting as bigotry and hypocrisy. Diane Fortune makes the point that there are two kinds of evil, positive and negative. Negative evil is not so much a matter of choice as unbalanced temperament, but positive evil involves willfully espousing an unbalanced force for some sort of self-gain. And so the point is that, you know, there is unbalance at all levels of this of this image, and I'll bring back the original image here. Let me just do that so that we can refer to the relevant image. So this is a model of the universe. And so each of these paths between the Kabbalah points contains one of the archetypes, either positive or negative. So this green one right here, we've already talked about, is mother. And one of these coming from Kether down is the magician. Okay, presumably the other one would be the high priestess, but we haven't gotten that far yet. But let's say that mother is imbalanced, that this is the bad mother. Then there are certain influences that are going to try to bring that circumstance back into balance. And so the point of understanding this model ultimately, and I'm not promising to do it tonight, but over the next year, I hope to, that we will all understand this model and understand what the forces are that need to be brought to bear to create unity and to create balance, okay? And so obviously in various realms of our lives, we have imbalance, and it would be very useful to understand how to keep them in balance. And you know, whether they have to do with your little sister or your mother or a friend or society at large, all of these things, these extremes are out of balance, and therefore they are, according to Wang, evil. And I concur with his assessment. Any comments about that?
Yes, I wonder whether fear, I was just going to write it, fear drives us to imbalance. Fear puts us on the defensive.
Surely.
And so we immediately go to one pole or the other.
Well, and so if we're conscious of it, if we start to understand that going to the other pole isn't the right answer, and you know, Nancy correctly called me out on some of the things that I said politically early, you know, a year ago or so, on this channel, and I had created a political psychology channel, which I haven't been contributing to lately, but the point is that we have to find balance, that pulling as hard as we can to the left or right doesn't solve our problems. We have to find a middle ground. We have to find uniting principles within our lives. As long as we're pulling to the extremes, then we're causing our society to fail. And so I'm trying to be more balanced in these things.
There's an ancient Jewish canticle, an ancient Jewish hymn of praise, which Simeon is said to have proclaimed. But one of the lines is that free from fear and saved from the hands of our foes, we might serve God in holiness and justice. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the point. Free from fear, we're free.
Yeah, right, precisely. Okay, so let me give you another perspective on the magician, though. This is from the Linestrider deck, and I'll show you. She has done the magician as animals, or a lot of these as animals, but she's shown the magician as a simian. And but I like her write-ups, the write-up she's done about these various cards. She said, and this is Siolo Thompson's book, that this is the Linestrider's journey. She says, The Magician is a powerful card associated with consciousness, actions, and creation. He may appear when you have a specific idea or goal toward which you are working. The Magician is related to the Mercurius of alchemy and to the number 1. He is a card of beginnings. For me, he manifested as a simian character, clever and capable of making things, able to craft tools and figure out new ways of doing things. He stands between the spirit worldly and humanity, or between the spirit world and humanity. In one hand, he holds a staff raised toward the sky. His other hand, in benediction, gestures toward the land. Above his head is the symbol of eternity. This card often appears when you need to channel the power of the universe toward your goals. The Magician is a good omen when you have a specific wish, when you begin a project involving creativity, or when you need to make a transformation of any kind. This is a great card for meditation when you need to call all the elements for help and wisdom. In a reading, the Magician can indicate an approaching period of your life when things seem to fall into place, a time when your efforts will yield results and you will feel empowered and able to accomplish your goals. That is the Magician's potential. When compared with the Fool, especially with the Fool in the present position and the Magician in the future position, you can expect to experience one of those golden windows when everything seems to go your way. Paired with a strong Pentacles card, you may suddenly find that you have increased aptitude in financial matters. In a romantic reading, be aware of your personal power and be wary of people that bring out your manipulative or domineering side. Just because you can make others heed your will does not mean you should. Remember to wield your power with compassion and kindness. In his reversed aspect, the Magician can indicate that something is blocking your creative energy, or that your power is being directed at something futile or counterproductive to your goals or growth. The Magician is associated with the planet Mercury and carries with it skill, logic, and intellect. In conjunction with the Chariot, especially if one of these powerful cards is in reverse, you may find an increased, nigh magical ability to attain the goals you are driving so hard to reach. But beware, this kind of ambition and success can come at a steep cost. Okay, so the astrological sign of the Magician, according to her, is Aries, for them that want to know. Okay, that's another way of looking at it. And I started this process talking about Liz Greene's book, and Liz Greene and Juliet Sherman's book, the New Mythic Tarot. And so I want to refer back to that as well. And so I do have somewhere here. There he is. This is the image that they have, and this image is by Giovanni Caselli, presumably. Okay, so again, we see the 4 functions on the table in front of the Magician: the sword, the caduceus, which represents, the opposites, obviously, the cups and the pentacles. And in her book, Dr. Greene has some sidelights to the card. It says the cup represents the cup of fortune, particularly fortune in love. For Hermes is wise in the knowledge of the heart. The caduceus is Hermes' wand of magic entwined by 2 snakes, which represent all opposites, good and evil, male and female, dark and light. The sword represents the cutting edge of the mind and its power, given to Hermes by his father Zeus. And the pentacle, or coin, marks Hermes as the god of sudden good luck and as the patron of merchants and businessmen. This is what she says. The card of the magician portrays a wiry, slender young man with curling black hair who stands facing us at a crossroads. He is dressed for the road in a short white tunic and a deep red traveling cloak. With his left hand, he points upwards toward heaven. With the right, he gestures at a flat rock which lies before him at the center of the convergence of roads. On the rock, 4 objects are assembled: a chalice, a sword, a flaming wand or caduceus, entwined by 2 snakes, and a pentacle. Behind him can be seen a barren landscape of brown and gray rocks, a continuation of the landscape that we met in the card of the Fool. 2 branches of the road vanish in the rocky distance. Okay. She says, I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to read on the inner level and on the divinatory level. On an inner level, Hermes, the magician, is the guide. This means that somewhere within us, no matter how lost or confused we might be at any point in life, there is something within which has foresight, and resources that are often hidden from consciousness, but which can divine what direction to take and what choices to make. The magician does not come when he is called for. For Hermes is a wily and playful god and does not always respond to what we think is an important situation. He has his own ideas of what might be important. He comes in the night, often in the form of a disturbing dream, in the guise of a meeting with another person who turns out to be somehow significant as a catalyst on the journey. Or Hermes can appear as a sudden hunch or the discovery that one knows more than one thought. The book which one accidentally reads, or the chance visit from a friend, or any of 1,000 strange little turns of fate are the handiwork of the magician. The inner guide, in a sense, the magician is spiritual teacher and protector of the fool. Just as in the myth, the god Hermes managed to sew the unborn Dionysus into Zeus's thigh and looked after the child until he was born. Hermes, the magician, is that unconscious power within which looks after us, although we cannot see him, and which appears as though by magic at the most critical and difficult moments in life to offer guidance and wisdom. Hermes was not a god upon whom one could rely for the ordinary decisions of everyday life. He could be tricky and treacherous, and often his directions led men and women astray into the night through convoluted paths that left the known and well-trodden landscape and took the traveler into strange and frustrating places. To follow the inner guide does not always mean making the choices that are secure and guarantee results. Often they are the opposite. But because Hermes is the master of the 4 elements, his wisdom can penetrate all the spheres of life: the mind, the imagination, the heart, and the body. Without him, we have no inner resources at all, but must always rely upon the direction of others and are doomed to travel like sheep on the same worm track as everybody else. The fool meets the magician only after he has braved the precipice, for the visitations of the inner guide do not come when one hides safely within the maternal cave. And then she says, on a divinatory level, Hermes the magician points to potential skills and creative abilities which have not yet manifested. He may appear as an upsurge of energy and an intuition of exciting new opportunities. He presages insight and an awareness of unexplored possibilities. The fool is blind, with only his animal sense of a meaning to be found somewhere somehow, but through his meeting with Hermes, the magician, it becomes clear that the journey is possible and that one has capacities that have yet to be developed. Okay, so that is Liz Greene's take on that. Okay, I still have a couple of other cards to show you, but are there any other comments here before I go on?
I just love that it shows we have infinite potential.
Yes, and we have it every day, all the time. Each of us is building our own project, and you know, here's an example in my own life. When I was in Japan, I had a bunch of bankers that lived in my neighborhood from different international banks, and occasionally I would go to a cocktail party with these guys, and they would come to me and they would say something like, well, Skip, don't you get tired of headquarters telling you what to do? And I said, no, I don't get tired of that, because they don't tell me what to do. I tell them what to do. And they go, and the point is, if you're out in the field, if you're the eyes of the company, in that case in Japan, they can't see what the right thing to do is. They have no clue. And so you have to be the one that guides them. That's your job. And if you don't know that, then you're in the wrong place, that's for sure. And so, you know, I always considered, when I was building a company in India, which we ultimately took public, I always considered it my project. And I still consider these things my project, in the sense that it's me that has to come up with the things that I need to move the project forward. So when I say, you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, well, I'm going to teach a course on the Tarot for a year, then okay, that's my project. It's nobody else's responsibility to teach the course. And so it's my project to pull in the assets I need. And today it was a close thing because Zoom was actually down this morning, and it was a questionable thing whether we could even have this session tonight. And so, you know, I always have to figure out what it is I have to do to make the program, the live stream itself work, and then how to make the YouTube replay work, and what has to be in the description of the YouTube session, etc. All those things are my responsibilities because it's my project. But your life is your project, and it's you that has to bring in all the assets that you need to achieve whatever you want to do. That's the whole thing. And every one of us, even those of us with disabilities, have that responsibility. We have to be responsible for our own lives. First, we can't wait and expect that somebody else is going to solve our problems for us. And so, okay, so now I'm going to take this to the Deviant Moon Tarot. And I particularly like this Tarot because, first of all, Patrick Valenza has done some wonderful write-ups. I can't say as I love his imagery that much, but nonetheless, it's very compelling, I should say. And so I want to share with you the magician from the Deviant Moon, and I will read to you what Patrick has to say. And so this is the Deviant Moon magician, and here's what Patrick says. The novice magician performs on stage to the shadows of an imagined audience. Though he has not yet achieved mastery of skill, he envisions a time when he will be competent in his craft. His innate confidence lays for him a mental blueprint on how he can one day reach his goal. There is great effort and concentration expressed on his face as he wields the 4 symbols of the minor arcana. With time, practice, and patience, he will become fluent in them all. Although the magician has the inherent gift of 4 hands, he must still labor diligently to teach or to reach such a high level of craftsmanship. He dips his forefinger into a cup of blood, demonstrating that his art does not come without pain or sacrifice. The box at his knees is a material manifestation of the cosmos, symbolizing that mortals, as well as gods, can revel in the rewards of the universe through hard work, discipline, and perseverance. And then he says upright meanings. This is obviously in divination. The magician shows that you are more than able to master any desired skill through practice, sacrifice, and a determined focus on your outcome. You know, I would say there will be blood, and so you have to put your blood into it. He encourages you to invest the time to cultivate your potential abilities. Occasionally, you may feel overwhelmed or frustrated. However, persistent to the task at hand will pay off. Persistence to the task at hand will pay off. Stay confident in your craft and believe that your creative power will manifest into tangible results. Be resourceful in your approach to all situations, remembering that you already have everything you need inside yourself to accomplish your dreams. And so Patrick has certainly done that with this book that he has written. It's quite an impressive volume, coffee table book, and so on, called The Deviant Moon Tarot by Patrick Valenza. Okay, reverse meanings. The magician reversed warns of the waste or misuse of your unique talents. There may be setbacks in undertakings due to uncoordinated efforts, and you might find yourself unable to grasp new concepts as confusion sets in. This could also signify the lack of confidence in your emerging abilities. Like the Fool, Venetian fashion influenced the design of the magician. An early incarnation of this character appears in an illustration for a story I was writing in 1982. In the story, a mechanical fish made of gold arises from the canal and takes a few citizens on an exciting ride beneath the city. At the time, I was progressing in my work as a colored pencil artist, yet I was getting tired of drawing figures in a traditional manner. I felt the need to grow beyond what I was comfortable creating. When designing the magician's body, I chose to combine abstraction with realism. Multiple arms came naturally for this figure, as it was a necessity for him to be performing with all 4 suit symbols. His stylized anatomy became the precursor of other odd body parts found throughout the deck. And I'll just share with you the image of the Venice that he did, which is, I'll need to stop my virtual background for this so that you can see it. Okay, so here's his Venetian scene from 1982. with the fish, the mechanical fish, ready to take people on a ride underneath the city. I don't know if you can appreciate how special this drawing is. Apparently it was done with pencil, but it's quite a special drawing. And so I'm a big fan of Patrick's. So that's the main things I wanted to get through tonight, but I do have a few other examples just to share with you since I did pull them up. I'll share with you a few more. These are other versions of the magician, for better or for worse. Okay, so here we have two. This one and this one are from Melissa Townsend's deck. Several of these I'm not, I mean, I like this one of the magician because Melissa made a face out of the four symbols of the suits, but this particular deck where it's pretty hard to see the symbols if they're there at all. I don't think there's a sword there, for example. And I guess there's a wand and there's coins, but I don't see a sword. And I don't see a cup. So that's one example. Also, this one I'm not particularly thrilled with because it's a bit too stylized. This one, it comes from the Golden Dawn Tarot deck, and so you can see the four symbols here. And this is from the Spirit Song Tarot deck, and she identifies two purposes of the magician: willpower and creation. And so one of the ideas of the magician is free will. And so this is a raven who can control his life. And let's see, I think there may be a couple of others here. Yeah. Okay, now I do have several miniature decks, and so these are all miniature decks. This is the Everyday Tarot, and again, the symbols are present, all the symbols, including the infinity symbol and the four suits and the wand pointing to heaven and to earth. This is the Sforza deck, which is one of the earliest decks in the Tarot ever made. And then this is the Secret Tarot deck, which, and all these are very small decks, very like this. Let's see if I can. Okay, all right, so let's pull that off. All right, so let's see. Mal says, we really have many magical tools today: smartphones, computers, audiovisual tools, apps and software galore, all waiting to be used by magicians. Absolutely. And Fruitsy Hip Productions says, in answering the question just before me, you read Jung. He described how Christians wrongly considered the antithetical Diablos as evil. So I'm not trolling you. You recently said young men need guidance, and that you were here to offer help. So why dodge me? Why is my hate evil bad? Okay, well, I answered this question earlier. Because we need to have a society, and if you're going to hate people, then you can't live in society with those people. And what have they ever done to you? Why do we have to have civilization? Because wealthy people say so. We both understand that all knowledge, meaning, is will to power. Well, I don't agree with that. The opposite of the will to power is love. Why does my chaos have to be suppressed while your order reigns supreme? Because you have the majority on your side. Well, let's put it this way. If we have chaos all the time, I mean, if you want chaos, you can go down to the zoo and you can see the great apes, and there you will see all the young females grooming the one alpha ape, and all the young males are around in the trees, but they don't have the females with them at all, and so they can't live a normal life. Only the alpha male gets to live a normal life. And so that's how the animal world works. And if you see any of the Bug and Bunny shows, and you see Richard Attenborough talking about the story of nature anywhere at all, you will see how horribly violent and and chaotic life is in all species other than humans. And even humans are quite violent. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, we've dumbed down what we're doing, but everything that you buy at the grocery store was once alive, because all life lives on other life. And so we've dumbed things down. Instead of saying slaughterhouse, we say packing plant. That's a nice way of saying a slaughterhouse, a place that we kill animals so that we can rip their bodies apart, package them up in nice plastic, and put them on the shelf in your grocery store. But the reality is that the world can be quite a horrible place if you just let it be without civilization. And so humanity, by consensus over thousands of years, has decided to curb some of our instinctual tendencies. And so that's why we have civilization. That's why we have rules of law. And so, the point is that, the opposite of hate is love. And so if you want to pull in that way insistently, it comes down to this definition of evil that Robert Wang spoke of. And so, okay. Okay, so thank you, Miles, for deleting those messages. That's appropriate. We do have hate mongers out there in the world, and they don't represent how civilization can survive. And so what we need to do is find middle ground where we can all live, and then we have a better life for everyone. And so I'm sorry for Rootsy Hip Productions, but Um, yeah, and so Miles, you can mark them for being blocked from this channel, or I'll take care of it. Wait a minute, I can do that now.
I wonder whether I could just point out, Skip, that is the caller asking why do we have the status quo? Or what is the caller asking about?
The caller is saying, why can't I be evil, or why can't I be hateful? And I've now blocked this person from this site. And, the point is that if you are hateful and you are evil, then you have to think ahead. How is your life going to play out? And I don't think it plays out in a very good way if you decide that I can be evil all the time, or I can be hateful, and that's going to work. The reality is that it doesn't work, and so.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought he was asking about the imbalance between the first world and second world, which is actually much more nuanced. But yeah, obviously a hateful person wants the destruction of everybody on this site, let alone the destruction of everybody in the world, including the second and third world. So yeah, I didn't realize that, sorry.
Yeah, and so, I don't condone a lot of the things that we do in the name of civilization, but I also don't condone ignoring our own violence, our own shadow side. And so when we throw the book at young black men, they've sold a few ounces of cocaine or whatever it is, and we send them to jail for 10 years and then turn them into modern day slaves, and then sell out their labor for 22 cents an hour or whatever it is, which is, for me, that's modern slavery. Whereas somebody who basically tries to destroy the United States, as several of our campaign managers of Donald Trump have done. I spent my whole military career, providing a readiness against, military action from the Soviet Union. And so now that has changed from the type of action that's fought on the seas or in ground combat, and now that it's in an electronic version, some people think it's okay. I don't think it's okay. I mean, I don't think it's okay that we have Russian or Chinese or Korean actors who are trying to interrupt our election. That's not okay at all, and that has to be defended against, just as if we were on a submarine or a aircraft carrier or in a battalion of Marines. It's just as insidious and just as destructive of our society as a war with explosives. And we have to recognize that, and to think that we can just give people a bye who have done that, and we've, it's not a question of being political here. These are matters that have been adjudicated now by a jury of these people's peers, or they've been admitted to by these men. And so, it's not a question of, being nasty to them. It's a question of national defense. And so, you know, in the same sense that I wouldn't allow you know, a division of the Russian army land in New York State and start setting up housekeeping without invitation. You know, I also don't want them disrupting our communications in the internet and destroying civilization as we know it through electronic means. That, you know, just because it's not explosives and you know, it's not done with guns doesn't mean it's okay. So anyway, you know, that can get me going, I suppose. But
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get you going, but I just needed to clarify that the man wasn't talking about society. He was actually talking about a kind of anarchic, nihilistic view that he just wanted to be evil. He just wanted to
He wanted to be hateful.
hurt everybody.
Yeah, he wants to be hateful. And so he has to learn that being hateful is not going to be healthy for him in the long run.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know of many lifelong criminals who have happy lives, and you know, hateful people get their comeuppance one way or another. And so I just don't want him to do his own individuation on this YouTube channel that I've spent the last 4 years setting up and building up. And so if, you know, he's got to learn these lessons, but I'm not here to teach him how not to be evil or why it's important not to be evil. I'm here to show him how he can understand his own life and understand why people won't accept him as hateful or evil. You know, we live in a civilization that our ancestors have built up over millions of years, and I'm not going to give it up just because some young person has some ideas that they haven't learned how to manage yet. I mean, I understand that when a baby is born, that baby doesn't know anything. They're born into chaos, and they have to learn how to live their lives. And so what I'm trying to do is offer an approach to understanding how to know yourself and how to live your life. But I'm not here to be, you know, to solve the problems of people who have gone astray necessarily.
Right. And it sounds to me like the young man needs a lot more help that we can't offer him.
So Robert F. says, military-wise, Joint Publication 1, JP1, was thrown out in 2016 by a series of tweets. Lost some faith then, and that he was trolling and a nihilist. Okay, I don't know what JP1 is, so I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Rob. But anyway, we've gone on for 2.5 hours. I think we've given a fair representation of the magician. I'll just show you a couple of more magicians in closing, and then this is from the Thoth deck, and this is Aleister Crowley, I believe, is responsible for this deck. And he has a whole different way of explaining this that relates back to Egyptian times. Now, most people agree that the Tarot originated in about the 14th century. But what Aleister Crowley did was he took it back to Egyptian times in some cases, and that was an example of his deck from the so-called Thoth deck. And just for everybody's edification, Eva Rider, who will appear here at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time on Saturday, she uses the Thoth deck exclusively. And so I haven't gotten my mind around that yet. Yeah, and I agree with you, Brendan, in your private message there. And so Robert says, so much for counsel. Well, I can counsel people that I can communicate with. I can't counsel people who I can't communicate with. And so somebody that's disrupting our process here is not helping the other people that are trying to understand what's going on here.
Is Robert seeking counseling?
No, I don't think so. So he first said, random drive-by, thank you from a fan. Thank you for sharing remarkable material with us. I appreciate it. So I don't think Robert is seeking counseling. He was referring to this other person as a troll. So, okay, well, we're not going to get into the political stuff. We can go to the television for that. I'm sure there's plenty of that by now this evening. So anyway, all right. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thanks, Nick, for signing on from Singapore. I appreciate that. And Karina, nice to see you. I would like to know more about you at some point and where you are from, but we can talk about that another time. You can write to me at skip.conover@gmail.com and let me know some things about you. So anyway, you're welcome in any case. So good night, everyone, and hopefully we'll see the advanced reading group on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and the everyone else in the Wisdom Path Colloquia. We have this weekend coming up with Eva Rider on Saturday night and Becca Tarnas on Sunday to talk about the confluence of J.R.R. Tolkien and C.G. Jung, which is very interesting. So peace. Bye-bye.